Aloha, namaste. This is Alexis with Radha Home Yoga, and I'm here to bring you your new moon forecast. We have the moon going into sidereal Leo, and the very beginning of Leo. The sun just moved in a couple days ago. As I'm filming this, it's the 17th, and the new moon is going to be happening on the 18th at 7:42 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So that's when the sun and moon will be in exact degrees together. So over this weekend, we had the sun jumping from Cancer into Leo. And I say jumping because it's the Gandanta point. It's the place from 29 degrees to 1 degree of, from 29 degrees Cancer to 1 degree of Leo, where we have this break. There's no nakshatra, there's no star that bridges these two signs, so we jump from water to fire. And every time there's a water and fire break, we have this Gandanta point. It's a place where we see a lot of like tumult possible. It's an intense placement because the shock of moving without anything bridging the gap, especially from like water to fire, is very intense. You know, moving from like the intentional or the emotional realm, pardon me, the sort of internal connective quality of water into that fiery go and do something, you know, quality of fire is shocking to the system. And the nakshatras that flank those generally have a lot of depth and intensity themselves. So Magha is the first star of Leo, and you know, as I just said, it doesn't have anything, it's only in Leo. And it's really where the king, and not just the actual king, but yes, those two, and you know, presidents or whatever we call kings these days, but also the king of ourselves. Like each one of us has all of these planets and all these signs in our chart. And Leo is really where we find our power. It's really where we stand in our power. Whatever place, whatever house that is for you, that's where you stand in your power. And the sun, which rules Leo, is really connected to our consciousness, our higher consciousness. And that's really what I think of when I'm thinking of the king. It's like, who's directing the rest of us? Who's directing the cabinet and the, you know, the minions and everybody else? Who's making this all work together? And if there's a strong connectivity point and everything that's coming from the top down is coming from a deep place and a well connected to spirit place, then we're more likely to act, you know, in ways that are in coherence with that. Now, if everything else is messed up, that's probably not going to work out. But you know, you have to start somewhere, and the foundational beginning when we're talking about this is actually sort of from the top down. We want to start with ourselves infused with spirit and acting in a way that's righteous. And so kings need to check in with their ancestors, right? It needs to be like, who came before me? If you ever saw The Lion King, which I have a 3-year-old, so I've seen The Lion King many times, you know, the great King Mufasa, the king of the lions, you know, he tells his son, when his son says, will you always be here? He says, you know, I won't, but if you look up to the stars, you'll find me. And all the great kings are up there, and they are the ones who give you your legacy and your power. And then of course he passes away, and his son does have to look up to the stars to find him. And this is really, this, every time I see that, I'm like, oh, that's so Magha. that's really this nakshatra. So we are tapping into our ancestral ties. We're tapping into our lineage, maybe not even our own specific ancestral lineage, but whatever lineage we choose to follow in this world. This is one of the things that makes the modern world so odd and so at odds with nature, is we aren't necessarily in our own lineage that we were passed down. Many of us in Western societies weren't really given a lineage. Everything has been broken at some point when our parents emigrated, or our ancestors emigrated wherever they went. The ties to whatever used to be, all the ways that things used to be done, the cultural norms and all of these different things have been broken. And we've developed new ones that really focus on materialism, capitalism, and you know, not having religious or spiritual or cultural traditions as much. And you see it happening even in countries that have very strong cultural traditions, that westernization is beginning to happen with the younger people. So we can see that this is actually where the tie is broken for us as a world. And this is something that is very, very troublesome in many ways. It's exciting because we can see the opposite of Leo is Aquarius, and there could be new futures and new systems and new ways things can go. But without something from the past that really ties us to righteousness, then we can be off in a faulty direction. And of course, many kings or people in power are tied to lineages that are not righteous at all, that are completely all about seizing power, holding power, and overlording it over people. So this is, also a challenge we've had that has ushered us into this time. But each of us, again, individually, has our own king and our own palanquin, our own seat that we sit upon, which is the symbol of this nakshatra and this star. And we have the part of us that is mighty, which is what Magha means. It means mighty or great. And so we can, sit in that seat and find our connection, albeit maybe having to skip the proper lineage or the way that we would have been shown things, that it would have been passed down in previous generations, and find our connection to source and to the way things used to be. And this is that place for us. So the moon and the sun are really early. They're at 2 degrees. Like I said, they just jumped over that Gandanta point. The moon is actually doing it as I speak, and the sun did it over the weekend. And what was really interesting is that Mars did it at the same time as the sun. So we had this sort of 2 really fiery planets, the fieriest, Mars and the sun, making that jump from water to fire and moving into their own signs, from much more gentle, watery, emotional energy where they don't necessarily stand in their power for the sun or for Mars, stand in that courage and that strength that Mars really represents. Instead, they were sort of in a more emotional realm and a more connective realm, maybe a more spiritual realm, especially with Mars and Pisces. But moving into the fire signs, it's like, okay, now's time for action. Now's the time to go out and get what I want to get. Now's the time to do what I want to do. And now's the time really to connect, so that the general of the army, Mars, is acting from a place that's connected to source. We want all power, all the directives that come down to come from a connected place. So any kind of ceremonies, if you have spiritual practice, people who are watching this, generally have some kind of connection to spirituality, or else you probably wouldn't be watching this video. So while the general masses don't really have much connection to spirituality, most people who would be watching a Vedic astrology video, especially with me speaking, are probably on some sort of path. And so whatever that looks like for you, whatever your spirituality looks like for you, I urge you to sit down and really go deep into that and really allow those messages from the ancestors to come to you. Allow that whatever you're directing to move forward in this phase is really aligned, is really aligned for you. So this moon and sun, this new moon, are joined Mercury, and Mercury has been really close to the sun recently at 4 degrees. And especially in Leo, we see Mercury, in Cancer, Leo, Mercury kind of wants to be passive aggressive and not say what it means. In Leo, Mercury, our communication, which is what Mercury is wanting to be probably a lot more direct and probably a lot more big and loud and heard. And in conjunction with the sun, we call this combustion. And the combustion makes it hard to be heard, where you feel like you're being silenced. It's literally the sun being so bright next to Mercury that Mercury's overshadowed and doesn't get to fully express and doesn't feel heard, and therefore has to sort of make jokes or something to try to get a word in edgewise. And in this case, we're in the sun's own sign. So the sun is really powerful, and Mercury is kind of in a position where normally, normally with Mercury in Leo, we see sort of maybe like a loudmouth, or somebody who really just says things without thinking, or really tries to hold the stage with their communication. And with this, that might feel really frustrated. With this conjunction, you might feel that super frustrated energy of, I really want to hold the stage, but everyone else is holding the stage, or somehow my voice isn't being heard. So something to just be aware of that could fire you up, because now Mars is in Aries, and that sense of anger can come quick when Mars is in Aries. But again, that sense of action can be very aligned. A lot of discipline and courage possible here, and Mars is in that Gandanta point, the other Gandanta point at 0 degrees, because Mars moves a lot slower than the sun. So the sun has already passed over it, but Mars is sort of sitting in that spot at 0 degrees Aries, and it's a little bit uncomfortable, because whatever we've been imagining in Pisces, that is the action we're supposed to be doing. It's sort of been this dreamy type of thing. And as soon as Mars moves into Aries, it becomes more physically like just go and do it, and kind of like a horse with blinders on, where you're not checking out side to side, you're just moving. And in this case, it's Ashwini, which is the two horsemen, and there is that quality where you just go without thinking. So we, again, really want to align ourselves. We really want to make sure that we're tapping into all the resources we have in order to make good decisions, good choices, good actions going forward, because we've just moved out of the realm of sort of imagining things and moved into the realm of things are going to happen now, and a lot will. So we have the planet Jupiter giving drishti to both Mars and the new moon, the sun and moon and Mercury. Although Jupiter's really late in Sagittarius, it's at 24 degrees retrograde, and all of those other planets, as I've discussed, are very early degrees. Mars is still at 0 degrees, moon and sun are at 2 degrees, and Mercury is at 4 degrees. So we don't have any tight drishti happening there, but there could be some wisdom imparted, some teachings, belief systems that could help us with that sort of tapping into the ancestral energy, the energy of Magha, and also maybe imparting some wisdom to that action that is taking place as Mars moves into Aries. So we've just been sort of ruminating from a spiritual place, from Jupiter's other sign of Pisces, the dreamier part of Jupiter, and that could perhaps give a little bit of energy, especially as Mars moves a little bit further into the sign. But of course, Mars isn't going to move that far into the sign before he begins his retrograde action. And this is a really interesting Mars transit that we have, this Mars from Pisces to Aries, and then on October, let me make sure I have my dates right. Well, on September 9th, Mars is going to begin to move retrograde. So he's going to start to move back out of Aries. And then and that retrograde period overall is going to last till November 13th. So we're going to have a really long period of Mars moving retrograde. But he's going to jump back into Pisces on October 3rd. So we're going to see us having to kind of run back over old ground here. So this is a really important Gandanta point, this one between Revati in Pisces and Ashwini in Aries. Revati is the final nakshatra, and Ashwini is the first nakshatra in the 27 nakshatra system. And so Revati is where we walk ourselves home, where we finally find the comfort and enlightenment and ease and grace after all the hard work we've put in. And Ashwini is where we're starting a new cycle and running off in a direction. So there's a lot of wisdom to be had, especially with this retrograde action, where the planet that rules Aries, Mars, is dipping into the ethereal, like otherworldly land of Pisces, where everything is sort of merging and there's not really clear delineation, and we can connect to spirit or we can just escape and check out. There's a lot of potential for that, and probably that's been a lot of what's happening right now while Mars has been in Pisces, because we haven't been informed by a really intelligent Mars in a while. We had Mars in Aquarius right before it moved into Pisces, and that's very much about social justice and anger around social issues. So tripping out on that and then moving into Pisces can send us down different alleys and different pathways of thinking about that kind of thing, where we get sort of lost and we're not as active, we're not as proactive, we're more following these different trends from what we just were informed from Mars in Aquarius. When Mars moves into Aries, like I said, at first it's going to be really fiery and kind of like, like I've been frustrated and sort of out to lunch, and now I have direction and now I want to do something. But it is its own sign, and there is quite a bit of intelligence there, and just the act of discipline, just the act of courage, just showing up every day and doing repetitive action, especially if you have practice, a physical practice that you can do, can be so empowering and can inform that quality of Mars, so that when he goes back again into Pisces, there might be more of a quality of a spiritual warrior who's really trying to attack not maybe attack isn't even the best word, but dive deep into the 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 realm of the spirit, especially in Revity, where we have that potential to really find peace. So if you have a meditation practice, if you have, chanting practice, mantras that you say, Mars could really show up in this time for you and give you the discipline you need to daily show up for your practice. Because ultimately, there's only so much we can think our way through, which is why Mars has a lot of problems in air signs, because a lot of times we try to think about stuff, and that's not action. Action really does speak louder than words, and even thoughts. And while thoughts inform our actions, if our actions are just solidly disciplined and we already know the right path to take, again, we'll back to the Magha in Leo, the sun being there. If we're coming from an aligned place and our actions, we know what to do, we know how to show up for our practice every day, we know how to do these different things, we're more likely to actually be able to think spiritually and feel and have all these different experiences. But it doesn't work as well in the other direction. Usually if you just try to be spiritual in this sort of intellectual realm, you're going to get lost down different paths, and you're not going to have as much of a capacity to really do the work that is necessary to show up. So this is why we see a lot of this sort of misguided spirituality, or things that just aren't meeting. It's kind of like random stray ropes that have never been attached to anything, or maybe once were and they've been cut and people are finding the frayed ends and trying to tie them together. That's a lot of what we see right now. And of course, a lot of that has had to do with Rahu and Gemini and Ketu and Sagittarius, where we've been sort of exploding all these different ideas all over the place, and really coming from these deep old beliefs we have that we're also not attached to. So we've had a lot of issues with drawing connections and having things come full circle, being able to just really explain what we believe and think and feel. And a lot of that is, the fault of sort of the mass spray of information that everyone's been putting out. It's almost impossible to know what is true and what is not true in this moment. But if we can travel back in time to where our beliefs come from, and if we can look really clearly at our actions and how we show up, forget the bigger picture, forget, maybe the political world or the realm of conspiracy theories and stuff like that, is dealing with a much bigger picture. But just within our own selves, if with our own manageable life world, we can think why do I believe what I believe? Where is this coming from? Why is the information that I pull out of the epic spray that's out there this information that confirms this bias that I have? And my actions really are going to speak to that. That's the part that people don't always understand, especially with Jupiter being in Sagittarius now, joined Ketu, and ruling over Mars in Pisces for the past, few months. And going forward, like I said, we're going to see that happen again come October 3rd. So how are my actions connected to that? How are my actions connected to my beliefs? And are they right? Is this aligned? Is this whole ship aligned? And I really love that about this moment, this Leo moment. A lot of people in the spiritual community talk about this Lion's Gate and this 8-8 thing, and I've always been kind of just sort of brush off those things, because I'm like, well, 8-8 it's a Gregorian date on a calendar, and the Gregorian calendar has no relationship at all to the moon, the stars, the cosmos. So for it to be a cosmos related event, it has to have a relationship to the sky. So I looked a little bit deeper into it, and it has its roots in Egypt, according to the thing I read. I didn't look that deep into it. I didn't look too far into it, but I was just kind of curious to see if there was a point where at one point it was attached to something that meant something. And it sounds like it has a lot to do with the sun being in Leo, and the idea that an 8-8, the sun would have been in Leo, at least according to what I read. Of course, thousands of years ago, that would have been true. There would have been no 8-8. There would have been no August 8th or Gregorian calendar, but perhaps maybe the 8th phase of the new moon after the new moon in Leo or something like that would have made a lot of sense. The 8th phase, the 8th Tithi, we call it in the Vedic system. But again, this is, sounds like it's more of an Egyptian thing. But the the reason I'm even bringing this up right now is because when I sort of raised that question, somebody said to me, well, when is the next aligned time? And it's like, well, those times are all around right now. And this Mars jumping point is a huge point of alignment for us, especially while the sun is in Leo, because it gives us a strong, powerful leader to help that active planet, that action planet, know what to do. Mars-Sun connection is very important, very powerful. It's literally like the king and the general of the army. So that alignment is beautiful, and especially while the sun is in Magha, because it's ruled by the divine Petries. It's about finding lineage in the past and getting the messages from the past that help inform the future. Once we move into the second part of Leo, it's going to be Purva Falguni. It's a lot more about enjoying the pleasures of being king. That's not going to be as empowering for what I'm speaking of. And then Jupiter drishti on Mars and right now on the sun, the sun will move later into Leo, and that drishti will become tighter. Also gives us a lot of power because Jupiter's in his own signs. We have Jupiter, Mars, and the sun all in their own signs right now, which gives us a lot of power. They're the masculine signs. They're the signs of our power, our authority, our strength, our ability to act in the world. They're all in their own fire signs too. They're not in their water signs. Mars isn't in Scorpio. The sun doesn't have a water sign, and Jupiter is not in Pisces. They're in their fire signs. So there's a lot of potential to act right now. Now, if you're totally unaligned and you don't have any lineage or anything to really do, or worse, which a lot of people have is like many lineages, like 15 different paths that they follow at any given time that don't really weave together or connect, then it's going to be hard. It's going to be a lot of anger and frustration, and how come this isn't coming out? How come it's not working the way I want it to be? And it's like, well, because you're not using a system, or you're not, your lineage is too frayed. It's too many of those ropes I was talking about that you're just grabbing at in too many directions, and you don't have a thorough follow through line. My personal Mercury is like completely out to lunch today. My tongue is like, but that is really important to understand, that follow through, that lineage, and these planets are supporting that big time. Jupiter in its own sign, Mars in his own sign, even retrograde, even when Mars is retrograde, even when Jupiter is retrograde, that internalizes it a lot. So it puts a lot less energy and action in the actual world, but it really focuses that for us. Like, you can really work on your own concept of discipline, or on your own concept of your beliefs, which, if there's anything that this past axis of Rahu Ketu has taught us, is that we need to look at our beliefs. Like, we need to examine the root of those beliefs. And then the next Gandanta point that's going to be hit coming September 19th is when Rahu and Ketu, the nodal points of the moon, they're the eclipse points, they're going to take their shift from Rahu moving into Taurus on the north end, and on the south end, Ketu moving into Scorpio. And that's another Gandanta point that's going to be jumped over. And it's going to be right in the midst of all of this, all of this happening. And the sun at that point will be transitioning into Virgo. But Mars hopefully will have gotten some wisdom from the sun being in Leo. And Mars will be doing this dance over the Gandanta point, starting retrograde and moving backwards, just about 10 days before, or 9 days before we have that axis shift. And Mars also rules Scorpio, that's in K2, so that's going to also affect it. The instability of Mars being retrograde and moving back and forth over this Gandanta point while the node is moving into its sign down below in Scorpio. So this is a really interesting time for us, where we have a lot of different things that are jumping into something new without anything gently guiding it. So a lot of abruptness and a lot of intensity and a lot of fire and a lot of wisdom with these planets, a lot of potential wisdom, breaking us up out of the slumber. Things have gotten a bit slumbery. It was like people were intensely all over the place with their, with their arguments and their obsession with information. Now people are really out to lunch. So this will be very strong for that. So that is all I'm going to say on this new moon, because there's, a lot said here, and we are going to have soon, I'm going to do a forecast special just for this Rahu Ketu alignment for the nodes. I already have my free report up for that. So if you want to see where your energy is going to shift, because these nodal points really show where our karma is driven. So in your natal chart, it really shows your lifelong karma that you're working with. In transit, it shows like that year and a half, where's your focus? And of course, collectively and globally, it will show it as well, which is why I really want to do a special report just on that. But this, you know, if you want to know for you right now, just a little piece, I wrote up a report for all 12 signs. So it shows kind of the overall of what's going on with the two. And then it also shows the individual signs, each rising sign, and where it's going to affect you in your chart, what houses it is. It makes such a big difference. So please, if you haven't already signed up for my email list, go ahead and do that. It's at www.radhahomeyoga.com, RADHA, home, HOME, yoga, YOGA.com. And please, if you're not already a subscriber of my YouTube channel, hit subscribe, ring the bell so you can get notifications, like and share this. Have a blessed new moon, and I hope all that fire really fuels you in the direction of your dreams. Namaste.